All right. Welcome, everybody. Here we are back for another awesome interview. I have my friend David here that's joining me tonight. David, you may have seen him in the last couple of weeks, actually, because we did a coaching conversation together, and David graciously shared that. And so, if you got a chance to experience that conversation, you'll be present to who David is. And if you haven't, it's a great conversation to go back and listen to. But so for our conversation today, David is going to come on and we're just going to have a conversation about the masculine leader. The masculine leader is a 3-month group coaching program that I've created, and David was one of the founding members that joined. And so we're just going to have a pretty cool conversation about like the experience that he had, any improvements that he sees to make, and just like what's his journey been like since then. So I'm going to pass it over to you, David. Anything you just want to share on the outset about who you are and yeah, just what you're up to in the world, what you're going to be creating in the future to come, and anything else you want to share.
Yeah, so as Andrew said, my name's Dave Childers. So yeah, I came into this kind of had some, well, kind of looked like I was on my towards my second divorce. Had another relationship that I have a child with, and that fell apart. And just kind of realizing like, um, done a lot of self work, trying to figure out what was going on, and just really felt like I was missing the mark. I started out reading No More Mr. Nice Guy, and then kind of through that saw the need to kind of find a group. And I'm more in a rural area, so it's hard to find that. So found Andrew's Facebook page, and um, he reached out to me, and I looked at some other coaching things and different programs, and um, they just all. The thing that stuck out to me on most of them was just how kind of a push to get you enrolled, and if you didn't want to sign up today for, you know, a million low payments of $100 a month, or it just kind of seemed more like a marketing thing than really getting deep and caring about the person and the situation and what was going on. So that was one of the things that stood out to me with Andrew, was just that when he came into this to be, you know, he's like, "Do you want to meet and do a, can we chat?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm going to be up front, a little leery, just because a lot of them are through Facebook, a lot of marketing stuff, and it's like you don't know what you're getting into." And just as I talked to Andrew, just seeing how much he cared about the situation. Obviously there's costs involved with doing coaching, but just that it's not all about the money for him, and that was one of the things that really stood out to me. Um, and decided to join the Masculine Leader. It's been a great opportunity. Um, and then a little bit more about myself. I've got 5 kids, and um, pretty difficult kids from 2 different relationships, and my current wife um, isn't the mother of any of my kids, so there's a lot of family dynamic going on. I own my own business doing construction. I've done that for over 15 years, going on almost 20 years now. And just kind of looking at some different dynamics with the economy and what that looks like. So, um, again, Andrew's helped with some of the family stuff, the business stuff. Um, and then just as I've done the coaching and even coming into this, I've always kind of wanted to do some kind of counseling and something like that. And more looking at opportunities to do some coaching, and get into coaching, and trying to find a way to tie that with the construction where I have such a big background and I enjoy the work I do for the most part. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with everything. So
Yeah, such a great introduction. Yeah, I will say, you said, I think it was sort of just a play on the words of like, mentioned like there's two different difficult children. I'm sure that's not what you meant.
right, but there is, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, and I'll just kind of start with that piece that you're speaking to, because one of the things that's been so cool about being in conversation with David too is he's helped me in in our conversations, continue to just refine how I show up in terms of enrollment into the coaching program. Again, I'm very fortunate. Like, I've come across a very service-based model in my journey that really is about creating connection. The idea is that through connection, we can actually create a business, actually, like, following that model. And then I'm going off on a bit of a path here, but like David, through his shares, also really, like, he's helped me see, like, one, that this is a great path to go on, and like just little things, little ways that I've been showing up to, like, really make it known that I'm here for people. I'm here to connect, and like, regardless of whether the person joins the coaching program or not, that's really just like how I want to be in the world. And so, like, thank you for that, because you've really helped me, like, continue to own that piece. And coming back to now that I sort of led us down this path, like, well, actually, here's where I'll speak to, because I know that this is something that really stood out to you with the masculine leader as well, is that you very much vocalized how, like, a lot of personal development programs are sort of focused on saving the marriage versus creating the human being. And like, what about that, like, as you're in that discovery process, did you even notice about, like, oh, this is actually where I'm more aligned in terms of, like, the places that I want to be supported?
Well, yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, so some of the other coaching programs that I was looking at were more geared towards um, marriage, saving your marriage. And what stood out to me is all of these were, they go to save your marriage, you really got to step back and focus on yourself. And then as I meet with them for interviews as possibilities of getting into coaching or just listening to more and more stuff, there was this emphasis on, like, we'll save your marriage, we'll fix your marriage, everything will be hunky-dory with your marriage, it's all going to be good, it's all going to be wonderful. And and it really hit me that, and I think one of the things my wife had said months or years ago was like, you really need to focus on yourself. And with my nice guy tendency, I didn't know how to do that, didn't really know what she meant. And I think that when I heard that from these other marriage based coaching, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what she said too. And and then I went back, but then as I looked at more of it, it was like, but now you're just focusing on the marriage. So where does that play a part into, if that's as important as it is, and I believe it is, well, now we're missing the mark back to how to get your wife back in 30 days or 90 days. And it's like, okay, so which is it?
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, that's really one of the things that I think really stood out to me was, okay, I am going to go into this coaching. Yes, I've gotten tons of advice and, help on my marriage, but really focusing on myself,
Hmm.
showing up for as the man that I need to be. As I looked at what healthy masculinity is, because toxic masculinity is thrown around so much. And, I think for me, knowing what that, my dad wasn't a strong masculine leader. I mean, I come from a family, we farmers and blue collar workers. So we're manly, but not showing up in that way
Mm.
as a masculine leader. So that was another thing that really stood out to me. It was realizing areas where I wasn't showing up in a masculine way. I was showing up in a feminine state. How that was pushing my wife into a masculine state, pushing a wedge between us. And so then I think we'd started talking even before you announced the masculine leader. And when you brought up the masculine leader group coaching, I'm like, man, that kind of is exactly where I need to put the focus.
Hmm. Yeah, and really to touch on this piece that you're speaking to is like, I'm in conversations a lot with men, who there's such a focus on, say, saving their marriage, that like, if 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 the marriage wasn't even in the picture, they wouldn't do the work, right? And so then what happens is that it kind of becomes like, a carrot in a way of like, okay, like, here I'm playing for my marriage, but like my life doesn't matter, in that sense. And so that's the real gift when we look at expanding on the whole self. When we focus on us as a, a whole person, and how do we lead our lives, then it's like the beauty of that is that whether you save your marriage or you don't, you are still that powerful, leader that just creates in the world. And that's, I've been very fortunate, because that's like, I guess you could say it, like some of the mentorship and the way of sort of viewing the world that I happen to adapt over these years, which is so cool, because now, like, the beauty of that, in my sort of long-winded way of speaking to this, is like, it makes it so you actually get to be the creator of your whole life versus just trying to figure out this one area.
Absolutely. And as that was the other thing when I first started talking to you and looking at some of these other marriage things. My marriage was in a really rough spot. There, all the people I talked to with just specifically marriage stuff was like, we'll save your marriage, it's going to happen. It's like, well, is it a money back guarantee? Well, no, we can't promise it will. And I was just like, so I invest, a lot of money into assuming based off a Facebook ad that you're going to save my marriage. And what if it doesn't? What
Mm-hmm.
am I left with skills? Maybe some information to go into another relationship, but it's kind of all, or you're putting everything on the table, hoping that it's good enough to save your marriage. And even if their program and their coaching is good enough, if a if my wife chose not to stay with me, it doesn't really matter how good their program is.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you get to the end of that program and you're like, now I'm single, I don't need to be in a marriage coaching anymore. Um, now what? And so I think exactly what you're getting to is, one, creating that life, whether it's with the spouse you have or not, whether it's with your family. I mean, that's one of the things, just structuring my home differently and creating my home dynamic that I want with my kids. Whether my wife's involved, whether my kids' moms are in the picture, whatever's going on, just really structuring my home for myself. And even one of the things that I think Andrew helped me with was doing a kind of setting my desires for my marriage without my wife's name on that list, and just what that looked like for me. What is it I want from that? And then I gave that to my wife, and that was probably the most powerful thing that I've done so far with the marriage. Is I gave that to her, and she didn't seem all that interested at the time. And then later she's like, comes back, she's like, she had moved out, and still she's got her own place, but we're trying to work towards her moving back
Mm-hmm.
in. But what I found was, she's like, well, I need to come out this week because one of the things you put down is you want to have sex once a week. And if I don't come out tonight, that's not going to happen. And it just was cool to see her respond in that way when you just lay it out there. And one of the things I did is I told her specifically, I said, this is what I want, not with
Mm-hmm.
you in mind. And she kind of was taken aback, like, what do you mean not with me? And I'm like, because this is what the life I want to create. This is
Yes.
my bare minimum expectations of what I want if I'm going to be married. And to just see her respond to that. And again, that goes into that whole creating the life you want, and
Mm-hmm.
just setting those expectations with my wife and with my kids, and even in business. What do I want my business to look like? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I went into business to have time for my family, and it's so easy as a business owner to get swallowed up in the busyness of business that you don't have that. And then it's like, so why am I in business? It's a lot, being a business owner isn't as good as people think it is. And now I'm not getting all this time with my family, that I don't get paid vacations. I don't get these, paid days off. I don't, some days, weekends don't get a weekend off. So what am I creating? What's going
Mm-hmm.
on here? What am I up to? And, that was just probably the biggest thing for me, was just that constant, like, you're creating your life. You are in
Mm-hmm.
control of your life. You are making your life what you want it to be. And then I kind of step back and I'm like, man, so with life in the last 15, 20 years of life, of divorces and failed relationships and kids and all these things, I started going back to my childhood dream of what being an adult looked like for me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, it's going to be tweaked a little. Obviously I didn't have a divorce and another failed relationship with mother of one of my kids, and all these things. But how close can we get back to that mark
Mm.
to create that life that I dreamed of as a kid? And the more I thought about it, I'm like, it's not perfect, but I could be a lot closer than I am right now.
Yeah. It's so great, just to hear that, just that sort of exploration that you're talking about, and just that, right? And so, lots more to dive into, from the experience, but like let's go back to even like stepping into the program and like just those sort of beginning stages of us having our first, I know we had a few calls, but even like that first sort of designated coaching call and then stepping into the program, like what was your experience in the beginning, or even in a sense like what was sort of the arc of the experience that you were stepping into?
Yeah, so I mean, just going into it, really having, because I've done therapy in the past and some of those things, and one of the things I found with therapy is I never felt like it was a never ending process, and it was just
Mm,
kind of a time to show up once a week, an
mm-hmm.
hour to kind of bitch about the week, and then on to go back another week. And I never really felt like there was like a let's solve your life problems. It was just a
Right.
safe space to go bitch. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. Like
Sure.
it's nice to have somebody listen,
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, but how is that what's that creating in my life? So that, when we started that first coaching call, it was like, okay, this is real. This is getting deep, and your I've said it so many times, just that perception that you have of like, what's the real underlying problem and
Mm,
how can we fix this and how can we solve this problem? And I'm like, oh, there's actually a lot of hope here that my life's pretty messed up, but at the same time, it's repairable, it's fixable. And
mm-hmm.
and then even as you've constantly reminded me, like, where you're at's okay. It's not where you want to be, but quit looking at your life like it's this big mess that can't be unraveled. You're alive, you're doing fine, and you can move forward in that. You can want improvement, but just being able to sit where I'm at and be content with where I'm at, and then build
Mm-hmm.
upon that for constant growth. But yeah, I think just the biggest thing was just really coming into that, going like, okay, it's not a hopeless mess that I'm in. There's hope here. You know there's solutions, and it's not you know um, wanting to get into one-on-one coaching. It's not a quick fix by any means, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a there there comes a day when it's like, okay, I don't have to do coaching anymore. I've
Yes.
learned to walk on my own, and I'm not just stuck in this state of like, okay, you need this and you need more and you need more. Like, we're coming to solutions. We're coming to
Mm-hmm.
resolutions to problems.
Well, and that's a great piece that you're speaking to, right? And first of all, thanks for sharing like just that experience, that difference between therapy and coaching for you. But like, here's an interesting piece, right? Because you know, intellectually, the standard of coaching, or at least the standard of coaching should be like, and I'll just sort of speak it out, is like the idea there is that like coaching as a model is utilized so that a person is given the insights, the tools, the structures that at the point that they want to leave the coaching container, that that they actually have, those things to be able to do that. It's a very like self-driven process in that way. But like it's easy to intellectually speak to it. What do you notice from going through an experience like the masculine leader, where like that's where you've kind of come to, like you said, like coaching is now it's a choice. It's not like I have to, but like if I wanted to, I could step back in. But if I didn't, I still have what got created there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things was just being confident in my decision
Mm,
making and who I am, and not second guessing myself. I mean, I'm a
mm,
perfectionist. I'm,
mm-hmm.
always struggle with that anxiety of like, is the decision I'm making now as perfect as it can be? And I mean, again, that's one of the things that really impacted me, was just
Mm-hmm.
that constant like, just throw something out there. And I'm
Yes.
like, but if it's 95% perfect, it's not good enough yet. And just realizing like it's okay to make some not perfect decisions, and move forward, instead of
Yeah.
sitting where I'm at and moving forward. And again, yeah, I mean, I think stepping out of coaching for a little bit just because of work and some, busyness and trying to do some other, not having the time to fully invest into it. Um, but feeling confident with that. Like,
Yes.
yeah, I can move forward, and I want to master these things that I've gotten to. And again, going back to that perfectionist side, I kind of want to master those things before I add more to that plate. But and worse comes to worse, if I don't, I'm not helpless and stranded, and I don't feel like I'm, you
Mm-hmm.
know, stuck without crutches anymore. I feel like I have the tools if I didn't get back into coaching again, that I'm not just screwed and stuck.
Right.
I think I have the tools that I want to get to that better place. But if I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I'm content and happy and equipped to move forward with my life the way it is.
Yeah, and I think that's a great piece that you're speaking to, because like even in this moment, I'd be curious about like, yeah, like here you are, you're not in the coaching container anymore, in the sort of the space of it, but yet what do you notice just about your life with some of the distinctions that we talked about, or some of the tools? Like, how do you just notice yourself in life now as a result of that?
What's interesting, like the first week that I came up and I didn't do the group coaching, I kind of had this like panic, like I
Mm,
can't do this alone. And then I kind of had a rough weekend, and I'm just kind of like,
mm-hmm.
oh, I'm struggling. Like, my crutches got ripped away from me, and my bones aren't, I'm
Yes.
not strong enough to
Yes.
walk on my own. And then just kind of building that confidence again. Like, you're doing fine. You
Yeah.
have the tools. Your problem isn't that you didn't necessarily not have that coaching call. Your problem is you're not applying the tools that you learned through
Mm-hmm.
coaching. And then as I
Mm-hmm.
pulled in all those things, being at cause and, break down to action and those things, I'm like, yeah, I got this. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, it's not it's not that bad. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
more of a psychological mind over matter, um, you know, kind of thing where it's, you know, and then you realize like, okay, you got this. It's okay. You're not,
Yeah.
you know, and so, yeah, I think, coming into it, I do miss the container that we have here, the space that we have. Just, it's very, I guess, motivating, encouraging. Um, just the energy here in the group and
Mm-hmm.
in our conversations is awesome, and I miss that. But taking that and creating that in other places and other
Yes.
conversations, and again, I think coming from that nice guy tendency and that just that low self-esteem and fear and whatever, you know, accepting that I'm okay, and and I can take this energy, this space, I have it within myself. And
Mm-hmm.
just that power and feeling, showing up powerfully in that way is huge. Um, you know,
Absolutely.
and it's something that is, you know, life changing.
Absolutely. Well, because, just that, right? Like you're speaking to, I mean, again, if you really like, if you really think at the deepest levels, this is what every person probably desires to have in their life, is an ability to be able to lead their lives independently. We spend years reading books and listening to audiobooks and taking courses, and there's always sort of a structure that's there, right? But actually being able to, you know, say like, hey, I can do this. I have the capability to do this on my own. And if I desire to step into a container and be supported, that's available. But like this, just that sort of that trust and that knowing, it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was, I think, there's so many things, and I don't know which one is the most powerful thing that I've gotten from it. But I think that
Mm,
confidence and that self assurance of like, you've got this, you've got it under control. Um, you can take that, I can take that energy. Half of the energy in our conversations is me, you
yeah.
know, And so take that and add that to every conversation and create that in every conversation. Obviously, when you put that energy together, um, it changes that dynamic.
Hmm.
But um, it's definitely um, yeah, just realizing how much power I have in myself to make those
Hmm.
changes.
Yeah, and just as a bit of a transition, so like, you know, first of all, like let's speak to like what were some of the concepts or the things that we discussed in the program itself that really made a difference for you.
Well, I think the one of the biggest ones, besides those kind of sub things that like the confidence, because that wasn't really a module, that was just some
Yes,
conversation we had,
the byproduct, right? It's a
the byproduct,
byproduct of the
but it's
conversation.
one of the biggest things.
Of
And so
course.
the modules are huge, but then sometimes you miss kind of that what it is, but you take it with you. But
Hmm.
I think one of the most powerful modules for me was the being a cause, because
Yes.
it I never look at myself as a business owner, never saw myself as someone who was you know a victim to things. I had an accident with a saw when I was 15 and cut fingers off, and I didn't see myself
Mm.
as a victim. I looked at how I could use that to better myself and what I could learn from that. So I was always kind of that person's like, well, don't be a victim, don't be a victim. And as we went into that being a cause, I'm like, I am a big victim to things. Like, and it just really hit me. And I'm like,
Yes.
I never thought that I was a victim, had that victim mentality. But when you stop and you look at, like with my kids, okay, my kids' situation isn't the way I want. I had more time with them that got taken away. Now I only get my kids every other weekend and Wednesdays. And so my kids don't act the way I want them to. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. I don't have enough time with them. And just stepping back and going, how much of the time you have with them are you being really at cause?
Hmm.
Are you using that time? Are you setting that standard? Are you setting those expectations of the kids, what you expect in the home from them? And so, and then even with business, like with the economy, we talked about
Hmm.
how much of your business is affected by economy, and you're like, well, what, but you don't blame the economy. What can you change? Well, it's a downturn in the economy. People aren't putting money in their homes. Okay, what can you do? Well, maybe go into some different avenues of income that are outside of the housing market, which is, crazy right now. And just, obviously the economy affects all of those little things, but really just exploring how that list of what can are you in control of and what are you out of control of. And now there's certain things to us a bit, but the list that you're out of
Hmm.
control of should be slim to none, and what you
Yes.
are can be in control of should be a lot longer list. And just doing that just was like, oh wow, there's
Hmm.
it started out as I did the list, it was like nothing's in my control and all this stuff's out of my control, and I'm like, okay, I could shift this over. Like there's still a level of out of control of that of my own, but
Hmm.
taking accountability and taking responsibility and action where you can in those things. And it just changed my whole mindset for family, business, my marriage. Like whenever, and it was funny, I had a similar conversation with my business partner right around that time. And he's like, he confronted me, he's like, you say the problem is a lot. And
Mm.
I realized what a victim phrase that is. And now it's a huge joke because we'll be working with other people. And they're like, well, the problem is we can't,
Hmm.
complete this project on time. The problem is that the weather, and just when you stop and are mindful of how often people say the problem is dot, dot, dot. The
Yeah.
problem is I'm out of control. And it's just, we joke, my partner and I joke about it now, but it's such a big deal. Like there's so many things. Well, the problem is I'm out of control of X, Y, and Z. Okay, but what part of that can you take back?
Totally. And it's very freeing in its own sense too, right? I'll speak to one, and this is one thing that I speak to a lot in the program itself is like I'm in the game with you guys. Like I'm utilizing these concepts and these tools in my own life and sharing it with you. And like say for example today, like I got a bill that there was a penalty on this bill for like $500, and like every other year when I've gotten this bill, it's come in the mail. So it's just been obvious that it's like every year I've paid this bill like no problem. And this year they didn't send the bill. All I got was the second notice of basically like, you're late, there's a 10% fee, and it's a provincial bill. So like there's nothing that I can do about it. I just have to pay the penalty. And of course, there's that side of me that's like, this is ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. But even just looking at, where can I be responsible for this? Where was I not responsible for this? Where can I be at cause so that this never happens again? And I'm still even going to be contacting the province around just like, hey, this is crazy, right? That like there's no process for remediation on this, especially as like a good standing individual. But like that's the power of what we're talking about. And I think that the thing that's so important is like, notice that like it's fine tuning, right? Like you're speaking to sometimes, like seeing where we're being a victim is so unconscious. We can't necessarily spot it because you yourself are an individual that creates a lot in life. You're up to a lot of things, and so like on the sort of the surface level, you feel like you're at effect everywhere, and it really takes that reflection to look at like, ooh, where are these areas, these unconscious areas that are impacting me? But if I actually can gain some velocity over them, like how will that change my life?
Absolutely. And it's, I mean, like you're talking about, I've had some things like that where, it's like I've gotten a bill, I've gotten this, but again, at the same time, to be at cause, well, I've paid
Totally.
the last how many years. So when that didn't come around,
Yep.
I kind of should have been a red flag. Now, I mean, it's easy to slip
Totally.
in the cracks, but there's a place to take cause. Like just being more aware of what bills come and go, or and
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the things that I found interesting too on this point too is like being at cause, but then when you slip on something or
Mm.
something like that, just being more gracious and patient with myself and be like, yeah, it wasn't a cause, okay, well, we'll try
Yes.
it harder next time, instead of beating myself up like, I
Oh,
really
that's so
screwed
good.
up. Why was, I was a victim to this and I allowed myself to be a victim and I didn't be a cause, and I'm failing to just be like, meh, okay, well,
Yeah.
that sucks. In your case, I got to pay the $500, but whatever, what you do.
Yeah.
Like next year, I'll put it on the calendar, make
Oh
sure it's
yeah.
paid by
It's
this
already
date.
on the calendar.
And,
It's
and then just seeing everything is like, okay, so it was a screw up, but it's a learning opportunity. So
yes.
now, what other bills do I need to go through and check
Yeah.
and make sure, or just the, so many things where just areas again where backing off on that perfectionism to a just nauseating level, but backing off and being like, okay, so whatever, but let's be more at cause, and
Hmm.
just the lightness to that, the power in that, the fun in that, to just be kind of like, yeah, okay, like
Yeah.
it happens, but not cool. But how can I do better next time? And just
Absolutely.
finding the energy and the excitement in there, you can do better, and you will do better.
Yeah. And as you're speaking to, right, that like a huge piece that you're speaking to is like having grace and seeing the humanity along the way. I know one of the things that you've enjoyed that I brought into the experience is like this dynamic of play, right? Just being able to play with life. And that's, I mean, again, there's so many cool pieces that you've spoken to today, like for yourself, right? Just like dropping the perfectionism, being able to have more grace with self, looking at these dynamics of just sort of enhancing on being at cause, recognizing where we're at cause, and noticing where we still might show up as victim. It's so cool. So as we start to wind down for tonight, as you stepped out of the program and you look at like, okay, what's next for you? What is it that you see to create for yourself in the future? I'd love to just to hear like what are you up to now? Like what do you see for yourself to create moving forward?
Well, so I mean, starting with my family, just continuing to create, set those boundaries in my marriage, not accepting that mediocre. I mean, even today there was something that kind of came up with my wife. She hasn't been out this week. My son wanted to see her and ask her to come out, and um, she made some excuse, and just really standing for that, and being like, listen, are you in or are you out? Are
Mm-hmm.
you going to show up for my kids and I'll show up for your kids, or what are we doing here? um, and it's calling out those excuses for what they are, and just really being firm and powerful in that, how I show up in that communication with her of what's going on. Like, instead of kind of dancing around like, well, I kind of feel like it's maybe an excuse, just be like, hey, that's a BS excuse, not going to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I brought something up, you said it's because you didn't ask, so I told him to ask you. Now there's this excuse, now there's that excuse. Let's really be honest about what's going on here
Mm-hmm.
and call that out. And then with the kids, just continuing to work on being a cause, and structuring the home and creating the home that not only I want, but what the kids want, and how, creating that happiness in the home that everyone can thrive with. Um, and then I think, as far as business, just really trying to step out and really expand, not accepting the mediocre that I'm at, really looking at ways to, um, and there's some challenges there with my business partner. He's got a lot going on with his family, so we're kind of in a difficult
Mm-hmm.
transition here. But really looking at what that looks like, given those circumstances. How can we push forward? How can I expand the business? Um, and how can I create the business that I want for myself? And what that,
Mm.
just exploring different avenues of, as I'm getting older, trying to find some passive income so that I can slow down a little bit more. My son's been working with me, so Pat, teaching him those skills and bringing him into the business and getting him involved, so that the business is still making money with less input from me. Um, and getting myself, backed out into maybe some more. Um, we're kind of getting into out of the residential construction and some dirt work, and just running equipment, so it's less
Yeah.
wear and tear on my body, and just really, kind of making a pivot at this kind of midlife point of like, okay, let's. I've worked hard for a lot of years, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
looking for a get rich quick, but the business needs to be making more money, and we need to be finding ways of generating income that doesn't involve me,
Yes.
on a ladder every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and it really, it's like, in a sense of like, it's creating that fulfillment in the second half of life, really, if we're speaking to it, right? Like designing it how you want it to be designed, which is really powerful. And thanks for sharing. Um, is there anything else you want to share? Just anything else that's left present for you, about the experience, or, just, yeah, anything that's there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just, I really appreciate you, and what you've done through your program, and just how you've shown up. For me, there were times, that stuff, you kind of ask me questions or send me on these little things, and I'm like, I don't know where he's going with this. It's kind of weird. Like, what are we up
Hmm.
to? And then coming to the close, like doing that survey, I'm like, man, you really. I'm very impressed with the structure, the
Mm.
logistics, the flow to it. I mean, we even had a conversation like which module maybe should come first or last, and he kind of explained why he did it. I'm like, oh, yep, that's
Yeah.
that. I don't think I could have done, and they all kind of circular flow where you can go back
Yeah.
to one and forward. But I think the way that you've structured it is very, very beneficial. And I know coming into it, there were a lot of times where, it didn't make sense, but at the end, I'm like, oh man, that was well designed. So I would say, for anybody joining the group, stick with it. Don't get
Yes.
discouraged at first, because there's a lot at first, and a lot of it's
Yes.
like, it doesn't make sense. This can't change my life that much. But when you get to the end, it was a building block to get you there. So I think that's huge.
Hmm.
And again, just really, kind of as a fellow business owner, just seeing your business model and how it's, built on relationships. That's kind of what I've structured even my construction business on. I've got some customers that are family. And so I
Hmm.
appreciate that more, you know, relational building business model. And, again, just the structure, the flow, the dynamic of it, from just a strictly business standpoint, and just a development and preparing that, um, just very, very impressed, and
Mm-hmm.
um, really just want to acknowledge you for how well you've structured the whole program, the modules, the just very smooth throughout.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I for the first like I had a conversation with somebody last week, and in the other program I have, the Authentic Man, the individual even talked about like, oh, like this seems like a really well laid out structured program. And like it's funny, I never really thought of it in this way, but like I did project management before, right? And so like that's the beauty of it, is that the program is designed to be open ended. And and in the masculine leader, it's a little bit more contained, right? But the idea there is that it's open. There's a structure to it, that the structure can be implemented into your life. But the beauty of it is that it's open ended, so that we can explore any area where you want to develop. And like that's the power of the coaching container, right? And so thank you, like, first of all, thank you for the acknowledgement. And like that, but the thing is, like you're speaking to, it requires commitment. It is not something that you can just like step into and not show up and not do the work and like create the results. You might create results, but maybe, I don't know. But the people that succeed in a program like this are the people that commit, that do the work, and take full advantage of the program. And that's by design. And so I mean, it's really a testament to you as well, right? You are a part of that success.
Yeah, and I think what you speak to is, I mean, there were times where I get busy and didn't have time, as much time to invest, and really saw that. So, I mean, it is definitely something. If it's something you want to jump into it with all you've got. And again,
Yeah.
that's kind of where me taking a break for a little bit really,
Mm-hmm.
because I know for it to really make a lasting, powerful difference, you really do have to commit a lot to it.
Yeah.
um, and just being pulled in so many different directions, realizing right now it's the time to take a break, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't have that I can't make that commitment right now that I want to make to that,
Mm-hmm.
and not lose traction in other areas and not miss out on some other areas. So yeah, I mean, if someone's joining the group, are you prepared to really go in and go hard and really commit
Mm-hmm.
100%? Because um, like you said, it does rely on the person's commitment a lot to
Yep.
whether they do the the modules, and really, it's like anything. However much you're willing to put into it, so how much you're going to get out of it.
100%. And that's, and the beauty of that is everybody's like commitment is going to be different, right? For some people that might be, an hour a week, plus the group call. For some it could be 5, right? That's again the beauty of it, is the structure is built that like, you can jump in sort of different points. You don't have to have like nothing on your schedule. But as you're speaking to, right, like, it's the more that you put into the program, the more you get out of it. That's by design, in that sense. So thanks for speaking to it. If people want to connect with you or find out more about what you're up to, is there any specific way that people can get in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, looking me up on Facebook is probably the best, and shoot me a Facebook message. David Childers on
Hmm.
Facebook. Send me a friend request. Send me a message on Facebook. That's probably the best way to contact me. Um, and love to be in communication with people. I've gotten in, I don't know, probably half a dozen or more people through this,
Yes.
and gain contact. I mean, through one of the just mini workshops he did, I've started talking to a guy, I can't remember, in Europe somewhere,
Yes.
halfway across the world. And it's just neat to be able to connect with people
It's
that
amazing.
have those things. So love to hear from anybody. Love to chat. Like I said, I'm interested in getting into coaching.
Yes.
So I really enjoy any of those conversations, to just, you know, be in conversation with people, and really create that container to have that, and just kind of, play around with coaching and what that looks like, and if it's something that you're like, I don't know if it's worth, you know, I don't want to bother somebody. I'd be more than happy to just, chat with somebody and have a conversation around that.
Awesome. Yeah, and same thing for anybody who maybe can't find David on Facebook. Just reach out to me, and I'll connect you guys as well. To end, I'd love to give you some acknowledgement, for us to end the conversation on, if you're open.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess it's like, oh, where do I go from? I know some of the areas that I've acknowledged you in the past. You know, and man, I think I've spoken to this before, but I really acknowledge you for your mastery. And if I could tie mastery to equality, it would just be like both the commitment and the wisdom that you bring, because you know you showed up so powerfully in this experience from day one to the end of the program, through and through. You really showed up powerfully, and I think that that's the beauty of what you're speaking to, is like, yeah, you can reflect back and see like, oh, maybe there were some weeks that I didn't put in as much effort as I wanted to, or maybe I fell behind on this. It doesn't matter, because the being of what you brought to the space was that of commitment and that real rigor to make a difference. And so I just really acknowledge you for that. And I acknowledge you for like just how powerful of a connector you are. You can just feel the heart, the love, the devotion that you bring to people in your life, and like you really make a difference for the people in your life. Like, it's so profound, it's so obvious. And I think that what is so neat about that is, so that's just like the natural way of being, that love, that heart, that commitment that you bring. And now it's like you've really stepped into that energy of play, of possibility, of creation. Again, I don't necessarily know you before the program. I don't necessarily think that this wasn't there, but like the fact that you get to create a container now for your family, where it's like really stepping into possibility, creating that lens of like being at cause as a family or even as a community. It's magical. Like, it's exciting that you get to be that beacon, because that's who you are. Like, you are that energy, you are that person. And so I just acknowledge you for having the courage to take on this work. And for me, I'm thankful that we get to be in friendship, regardless of where the journey takes us from here.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, brother. All right, guys. So for today, we're going to end here. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out about the masculine leader or any of the work that I'm up to. And absolutely, please reach out to Dave. I imagine I'll just even put it out right now, David, that like I imagine at some point in the future we'll be getting to create some coaching stuff together as well. And so be on the lookout for that, guys. Because I can foresee that coming in the future. And so make sure to connect with David, especially as he he's starting the coaching journey, and he's already doing that work. Great opportunities to connect with him. So thanks so much if you get a chance to listen to this, and have a great rest of your day.